Iron Harvest's single-player campaign is bursting at the seams with ambition, as though the developers at King Art Games looked back fondly at the mid-2000s heyday of the RTS and said, "We can do that." While this stylish alternate history game might not have pinnacle graphics and sound, Iron Harvest represents something that has become all too rare for fans of the RTS, and it's the best single-player RTS campaign I've played in years. Iron Harvest is filled with unabashedly, nonsensically cool stuff for nerds. The brilliant setting of 1920 plus is an alternate history where the development of auto-machine technology revolutionizes the world with diesel-powered mechs that starkly contrast peaceful agriculture and old-world streets. Our World War I doesn't happen, but the mechs become agents of destruction in a great war that consumes Europe. The countries of Polania, Saxony, and Rusviet are the focus of the campaign, and the three unique factions in Iron Harvest. Each faction has their own unique heroes, mechs, and 7-mission campaign that's part of a larger 30-hour story.
Here you go. Here.
Iron Harvest is an RTS in the grand old style, something we've only had a few of in the last decade. It calls back the story structure of RTS like Warcraft 3, where the central characters lead a cleverly crafted storyline and interwoven faction campaigns. It's full of better writing than I expect from most games, let alone an RTS. Actually, fighting is more modern than classic, with minimal base building, though engineers can build emplacements and fortifications. The two resources, iron and oil, come from capturing and upgrading income structures on the map. It's clearly inspired by Company of Heroes, but it's less doggedly tactical and has more strategic emphasis. The strategy is a balance of attack and defense. First, to secure resource points across a broad front, then to keep them upgraded, repaired, and defended. You spend most of your attention figuring out which units you need to counter the enemy's composition, building them, and directing them into combat. I came to really value units like this big soda can on legs, also known as the Polanian Schmally light mech, because it's a fast, long-range defender, or the Saxonian Isengrim crab tank, because it's tough and doesn't need too much attention while I micromanage elsewhere. Countering the enemy is important, because one of Iron Harvest's problems is the basic way in which it balances combat. The tactical landscape isn't complex enough, though it's a much more prevalent issue in multiplayer. Fighting between unit types can feel a bit too much like rock, paper, scissors, so there's not much emphasis on positioning. In the campaign, though, it's not so bad if you enjoy the scenery. Giant robots trading haymaker blows and naval caliber artillery shells put on quite a show. The story of Iron Harvest takes simple characters through cheap thrills and clever cliffhangers to surprisingly emotional conclusions. That the characters are simple isn't a mark against them, but rather it helps the story move forward in a limited space. Take veteran Saxonian general Gunther von Duisburg, an old breed warrior who fails to see the true scope and horror of industrialized warfare until it's killing his people. His mournful, grumbling admonitions on the inhumanity of chemical weapons, killing en masse from afar, and the vanity of kings are great material for the greater story. The campaign maps are varied, ranging from urban landscapes to pastoral countryside and rugged mountains. The things you do in them aren't particularly new. Sometimes you control a handful of units and find more as you go. Sometimes you control a full base and capture points to build what you like. Sometimes, mid-mission, you switch from one style of play to another. There are even a couple bad, shoehorned-in stealth segments. But it also has some exceptionally good level design, with some missions assembling those components in ways I've never seen before and didn't expect. If I'm being honest though, I was happy to see all these cliches again after so long since the last significant RTS came out.
We'll help them, and then we'll go west where they can't find us.
Okay, all that aside, the joy of playing this game is best summed up by breaking things. The destructible environment is the best I've ever seen in an RTS. There is nothing, but nothing, like watching a super heavy mech stomp through every building in its path. Observe.
Coming through. Who's next?
Otherwise, Iron Harvest looks good enough in play, but the graphics fall down in small places when you really start to pick at them. They're not bad, they're just not as photorealistic as the art style aspires to. In contrast, the cinematics before and after every campaign mission are nearly always a delight. Their graphics and sound are leagues better than the gameplay's, and they're smartly directed. One in particular depicts the rise of an autocratic ruler in such a succinct and direct way that, despite knowing nearly nothing about the internal politics and daily life of the nation, I immediately got the gist and wanted to know more.
A liar! The people are unhappy.
Iron Harvest's single-player campaign promises a bright future for King Art Games, because actually fulfilling the promise of a classic RTS campaign in 2020 is easier said than done. While the combat might not have the tactical complexity or strategic focus of the genre greats, it's still a campaign with standout missions. Perhaps the biggest surprises are the writing and storytelling in its distinctive dieselpunk alternate history world, which rank up there with the best in RTS. It's not an instant classic, but it's not a game you're likely to soon forget.
Operation Sonnenaufgang.
For more strategy, check out our reviews of Crusader Kings 3 and A Total War Saga, Troy. And for everything else, stick with IGN.